All right, we have another another amazing traveler. We have a recreation therapist, a writer, a dog whisperer on the Renaissance Exchange today. Welcome, Caralie.
Welcome to you. I'm so excited.
Yeah, this is definitely something I've been waiting for because we've had plenty of dialogue diving into all sorts of things in terms of consciousness, terms of recreation therapy, all of that stuff. But before we go there, let the people know who you are.
So my name's Caralie, and as Gray said, I'm a recreational therapist, and that's our connection. That's what brought Gray into my life. And I'm also a hockey player, and I have my dog Lindy, who is my number one companion, and she travels with me. And I like to combine the three of those things as much as possible in any way I can: travel, hockey, and Lindy.
That's what's up. I can't believe I forgot that you're a professional hockey player, a professional for sure.
Hardly.
So before we even dive into that, let the people know where you're from and what
Yeah.
was your upbringing like.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Fairport, New York, and that's just outside of Rochester, and it's a suburban town. We had a uh, really cool neighborhood growing up. I think I would eat dinner at my neighbor's house like 2 nights a week, sometimes more. So we had a really tight knit like couple of families in our neighborhood that I was fortunate to grow up with. And then I moved, same town, different neighborhood, totally different scene. No more hockey in the street. It was just like your standard, you don't really know your neighbors kind of thing.
Mm,
So I was pretty bummed about that, but also, it was in the same town. So it's not like, I didn't have to switch schools and all that.
yeah.
But yeah, I have two amazing sisters. They're both older than me. I'm the youngest. And my mom and my dad, and I would say my family and I are pretty close. They are what's ultimately brought me back. One of the many reasons I came back to Rochester after moving away for a short time is the relationship with my family, for sure.
That's super dope. Just the atmosphere of community, being young and going outside and playing, whether that's hockey, hide and seek, tag. Those are the glory days for
Yes.
sure. And
Yeah.
it's so much learning lessons in those games, and that's a part of why we decided to go into that for schools so we could
Yeah.
really dive into those nuances and stuff. So I'm glad that you had that experience. When I
Absolutely.
yeah, when
Huge
I
part
was
of my childhood, for sure.
yeah,
And it's still part of me today. So I think it's been
as it
great.
should, as
Yeah,
it should. Yeah, it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle for
absolutely.
sure. So, what would you say your personality is like? So you say you're in tune with like your inner kids. Like, are you more introverted, extroverted?
It's interesting. I think there's like a term for both, like introverted extrovert or something.
Mm,
Um, I never thought I was an introvert because I've always been outgoing. And when there's like some of my best friends are my best friends because they were the new kid. So like when someone new
mm,
came to school, I was on top of that. So I don't think I'm like shy and reserved, but then I think about the inner dialogue I have with myself and how much I actually do, how much time I spend alone and how
mm.
much I value that time. I can't call myself an extrovert because I don't go out, like I don't go I like to be, pretty solitary, I guess.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Or even with COVID, that's amplified.
Oh yeah.
Um, but just just that component of you taking the initiative to want to connect with those new kids that just shows the caliber of your personality, and that's why you're in positions of leadership, because you have that altruistic type of being.
It was either that or that I had no friends, and so I was like, new kid. I was like, they don't know that I'm weird yet, and they don't think I'm annoying yet, so I have my chance all over.
That's
One of the two,
hilarious.
but I like your explanation better, so we'll go with
I like that. I'm actually gonna use that,
yeah.
because I was like that as well. Well, post being a bully in junior high school, but yeah, that's amazing. So, what's the part of the stuff you do for fun? Like, even though you love that solitude, and you like to have dialogue with new people, what's some of the things, or we could do pre-COVID and post-COVID?
Yeah, because it's two different worlds for
Yeah.
sure. I've actually, I'll start with during COVID. In these times, I've grown a really strong appreciation. I've always been a learner and like inquisitive, but I don't. I fail often to take action on what I learn, and so I this pandemic, I've been taking the time to hone in on some of those things that I've always been inquisitive about but never taken action. So I've been teaching myself to play the ukulele, which has been so much fun.
That's dope.
Um, and I've always wanted to and never have. And so I'm finally enjoying it. I'm finally past the part where you feel like you're bad at something, and I'm into the part where it's fun.
Mm,
Uh, and it really took, it's kind of sad. It took a pandemic for like that to happen, but
everything happens for a reason.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
whole
So
pandemic was so you could learn the ukulele.
I think a
Thanks
lot
a
of
lot.
things, I think we're going to find out for years to come, both to our own persons, but also like to our community. We're going to find out all the good things that this pandemic actually brought. Um,
Absolutely.
I hope so anyway.
Yeah, and it's all about your perception,
Yeah.
and how you perceive what's happening. I know a lot of people put emphasis on the negative components, but I've never done that, just because automatically I thought, okay, now people are gonna be in the house more, then they get to interact with their significant others more. They get to take on new projects. They have more or less time to think and stuff. It depends on how many kids is in the house
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
I think about that a lot with just the fact that I have a dwelling where I can be safe is
Mm,
something that is like, I don't take that for granted because I know that being forced back into our homes, or at least to spend more time there, and the transition to moving things online, all the kids in school, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine um, what that whole scene looks like when you don't have control over your surroundings.
mm.
So that's something that's like, you know, it definitely sits with me, and it motivates me to be a resource for anyone in that position, and be a resource for people who, don't get to come home to their sanctuary.
Wow, wow, that's extremely deep. Uh, Especially just me thinking about what I do 9 to 5, and individuals that are homeless, or
Yeah.
couch surfing and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
that's extremely deep.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely depending on what perspective you have.
Hmm.
This whole last year looks very dramatically different from person to person, and that's why my core hope is that the community is that I'm not the only one like having these thoughts. I know I'm not. So I know other people have come to this silent realization themselves, no matter what place they're in, about how different it looks for everyone going through this at the same time. And so maybe out of that we'll get some community response. Like maybe we'll get some people who are impassioned to make some of those things change. And that's that's my optimistic outlook anyway.
We need to get you a TED talk For
A
sure.
TED
Yeah,
Talk.
you dropping gems. You're definitely dropping gems for
Mike
sure.
would be so proud.
Absolutely. That's my guy. Mike White. You
Yeah,
definitely gotta send this to him for sure.
yeah.
So speaking of that, my next question is previously, did you have any role models or do you currently have any role models?
Yes. An endless list of role models. I think
Mm,
um for one, I mean, you're definitely one of them, and you've been in my life from an adult standpoint. Like
yeah.
you weren't someone I knew growing up, but I think I'm constantly meeting new people who have different upbringings, different backgrounds, and just like learning about them and being in their presence automatically I'm like, well, that's one way of doing it. And then I
Wow.
might adapt, like I might inherit that thing, like take on an outlook that I never had before because just from being around them and them having that outlook. So I'm
Wow.
definitely pretty influenced by like good relationships,
Mm,
the gems, the quality people. And Mike Koquite for sure. He was my first real professional mentor and has remained a mentor today, even though we're no longer working together. So I still call him regularly and talk anything from career to health and wellness because he's just a very um motivated guy who is very open about like things he's tried and what's worked and what hasn't. So yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, first I want to acknowledge your adaptability and you are experiencing these different relationships and seeing a quality that someone else has and then starting to incorporate that immediately or soon after getting
Mhm.
that experience. So that's a great quality to have
It's
for
a
sure.
that was, I feel like, a very much a slow burn though. Like I don't
Mm,
think I've always been that way. I think like as a kid I was much more likely to shy away from people who weren't uh who might think I'm weird, like because they're so
mm,
different from me. Like I would very much sort of gravitate towards people who were safe
mm.
to and known. And so the whole like meeting new people thing, I honestly think it just took a few influential people in my life to meet that were not my typical, safe friend. And
Yeah.
then and kind of opening up in a way that's like, okay, this girl's really intimidating and normally I wouldn't be friends with her, but I'm gonna give this a shot. and
Mm.
and then all of a sudden like learning some really important things about that type of person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just diving into that, it shows me that you're receptive and open minded to interacting with anybody. I mean, just look at this dynamic. You being white, me being black. You having a very close relationship to with someone that has a disability, and that's going to be a lifelong
Mhm.
relationship, and
Mhm.
so do I. And your relationship with the dog, your relationship with groups of people and
Yeah.
teammates and stuff like that. So, like, you're extremely personable for sure. Take that and run with it for
I hope, I
sure.
mean, hey, I am slowly embracing it. I think
Hmm.
it's been a long time coming of truly allowing myself to be vulnerable enough to connect in such a way, especially with people who like I said, who were um outside of like my tightest circle and people who I could really truly trust. And so
Hmm.
um I think it's been really in the last even few years that I've grown out of. I mean, even since I met you, like
Hmm.
the amount of self that I allow to introduce to somebody has
Yeah.
just completely changed. I was like a very, you know,
Hmm.
kind of stay away sort of vibes for a long time. So,
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about that. So
yeah.
I'm gonna go into the experience of how we met.
Mhm.
So I had to solidify internship and stuff. So I had to go to a place that's within SUNY Cortland. I forgot the name of the hall. Um,
Oh, Racket?
Corey,
Corey?
maybe. So we had to go in there and then talk with a bunch of different interns and stuff. And at that time, I wasn't studious at all.
That's
I,
surprising.
yeah, like I was trying because I think that was the conclusion of my basketball season and stuff. And I didn't have any more eligibility, so I kind of had to really step up. Now I have more free time, so I was looking around, and then there was two internships, well, two locations that I was considering. I didn't really like the vibe with the first one, but then I saw Sportsnet, and I'm like, oh yeah, sports, that's what I do. And you had on your professional attire, and then we decided to chop it up about what it is Sportsnet does and stuff, and it's an adaptive sports agency in collaboration with CP Rochester and stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is super dope. And by the way, I really didn't disclose this to anybody, and I actually lied. With a part of the senior seminar, we have to find multiple locations and have spoken with them and document that stuff. And Vicky, that was a requirement. I only spoke with you, like you, but I had to make it
Oh man,
seem,
you're lucky Vicky's retired now. She
yeah,
would definitely not love that.
yeah, for sure. And I put all of my eggs in that basket of
Yep.
Sportsnet and investing in you because that was a new internship as well.
Yeah.
So you had to do all of the behind the scenes work, and I had to follow up with you and stuff. And that actually, well, from my perspective, helped you be able to increase your professionalism, how you articulate yourself, doing research and stuff like that. And you became my first um intern. What, you were the supervisor?
Intern
What
site supervisor.
site
Yeah.
supervisor?
Yeah.
And that was a part of what got me to Rochester. And and it was a different type of dynamic that we had. It was this is what you have to do. It wasn't like a dictatorship, not because that's not your personality, but it was more professional. It wasn't us talking about all of the nuances of what you like to do for fun, diving into consciousness, none of that type of talk yet. It was strictly about the the nuances of recreation therapy and the different outcomes that I had to get to. So yeah, I remember there was one instant, and because we're going into the summer, what was it called? Summer rec, the
Yes,
summer rec
correct.
program,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was different management there.
Yep.
Um, and that actually was a breaking point because
Yep.
yeah, there was conflict on your end, and it was compounding and overwhelming that experience for you, and you actually opened up and shared how you felt,
Yep.
and that was a connecting point for us.
I
And
remember the exact place we were standing
in the
too.
parking lot,
I
yep.
started crying.
Indeed,
Yep. Yeah.
indeed, and that was powerful. That was extremely powerful in a position of vulnerability.
Yeah.
So that transformed how we interact with each other, and we are able to really collaborate more and be more creative in terms
Yep.
of the different things we were facilitating, because I didn't like summer rec at all
Oh, I
because I
know.
didn't like being in the classroom.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we came up with new strategies for me to
Mm-hmm.
be successful. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was it. Like that was it. And now look, we have deep conversations all the time,
Yep.
for sure.
Yeah. It's that was a huge, that whole experience from the day I met you till the day I was crying in the parking lot and until now. It's been actually a really kind of cool, what's the word? Like a picture of growth
Mm.
in a sense, because you know, I sitting at that internship fair, like standing there,
Yeah.
you know, I was at that point like completely out of my element. Like, what am I doing
Yeah.
here? Like, I'm not ready to supervise someone. Like,
Yeah.
I just felt not confident at all. And I remember you having this like intense direct eye contact, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know how to establish like authority relationship with like
Yeah.
supervise. I was just figuring out like my leadership style and everything. And then admittedly, like, you know, I ultimately, it's, and this is so unfair, but like when it comes to guys, I'll automatically be like, oh man, like a guy is like harder to emotionally connect to
Yeah.
than a girl. Like, you know, I can't be vulnerable, and you can't like, you
Yeah.
know, say the things you might say in front of a girl, but that actually like it's just not true, but that's still
Hmm.
the mentality I very much had. And then I was concerned, like at points, you know, we would talk in a professional way, and um, you would say something, and I would, in my head, go to war because I'd be like, okay, this is what you want to say back as
Yeah.
an empathetic person, or as a kind person, as a compassionate person. This is what you want to say back. But then the part of me that was kind of the bully would step in and be like, no, no, you can't say that. This is professional situation, and like, you know, or you know, don't offend him, or don't this or don't that. And so it was like a war about like, how do I give this person, this highly motivated, highly talented, you know, really enthusiastic rec professional, how do I give him
Yeah.
guidance in an authentic way when I'm not being my authentic self, because I'm
Yeah.
so under
Wow.
the pressure of like performing. And it was just looking back, I mean, my leadership style is just, it's night and day from what it was from that first like few weeks or however long with you. Like I could not express that enough. I mean, that was a huge turning point for me.
Yeah.
So honestly, if I didn't have you to push me, um that I could still be stuck in that same style of leadership. And
Wow.
but you really, like, you pushed me. You were like, no, you're gonna take a deep breath right now. And I
Mm,
was like,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I remember those moments, and we had that shared space with Lonnie.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, I remember that. And I
yep,
always was telling you to breathe because it's important. And
mm-hmm,
at that time, I was diving into Tai Chi
mm-hmm,
and the beginning stages of meditation and stuff. And I know being in that work environment is overwhelming.
mm-hmm.
It's extremely overwhelming. And then just me reading body language and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
I think that was the worst part, or the part that like what I was so scared of is like I couldn't hide anything from you, and it was like you would know that I was having a bad day when I did not want anyone to know I was having a bad day. And that's just the sign of like a true intuitive uh character, and that's not a bad thing at all, but I was so
yeah.
intimidated by that. So
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And that just shows the good relationship that we have for sure.
yeah.
So what actually got you into that realm of recreation therapy?
um I I started volunteering when I was in middle school. We had this class called tech or shop or something, and you basically
Mm,
like made things, you know, learned how to use like different tools and things like that. And a lot of the projects you'd have to partner up with someone. And though I make myself sound like I had no friends. I'm totally joking. Like I had friends, I promise. But I always ended up partnering with the person who no one wanted to partner with. And it was always a kid from the BOCES group.
mm,
And BOCES is here in Rochester. It's a Center for Individuals with Disabilities. And they integrate into those special courses. So they might not go to your math and your science and your English with you, but they'll be in your home and careers, your tech class, your art class.
Mm-hmm.
And so my real exposure to people, working with people with disabilities, or being around them, or listening to them and learning from them, all came in those creative classes. It all came in phys ed and art and music and uh things you do with your hands and things you're moving your body. And so I think that was the start. And then yeah, I originally went into special education thinking that's what special education is, and that's what it means, is you're going to be creatively connecting with, making things and doing things and running around and sports. And I quickly realized I was going to be trapped in that classroom as a
Mm-hmm.
special ed teacher. And much like you and our shared disdain for the classroom setting, I just got through like part of my student teaching and was like, I can't do this. And at that
Mm-hmm.
point, I had started volunteering with a couple of adaptive sports programs and learned about rec therapy even being a thing. Um, and the whole ironic part of this whole journey of ultimately finally transferring to Cortland and um, getting my degree in rec therapy is that when I was 17 or 16 or 17, and I'd had a major surgery, and I was because I was still younger than 18, I was in the children's hospital. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like this older kid, but in the children's hospital. So they still had all the things like that you would do for a little kid.
Yeah.
So this woman came in, and when I was in the hospital, and if I was getting something done that was like kind of painful, or I was about to have another, like one of the shots that kind of hurt, or if anything, she would come in and we'd do boondoggle, and she would talk about it's boondoggle, like the
Mm-hmm.
rubber, I think that's what it's called, when you make like little bracelets and stuff.
Yep.
So we did crafts, and we would just talk. And I remember telling my dad, when I was in the hospital, I said, what is her job? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what a great job. She really motivated me to get up and walk around. And she really, like, she was a huge part of my recovery and my mental health in that state. And he's like, oh, she's probably volunteer, that's not a real job. Like, basically was, and she was a rec therapist. So
Wow.
ultimately what's funny is, he found out she's a rec therapist, and he was like, yeah, but that's not like a real thing. And so
Wow.
I never knew what it was until I was already, a junior in college. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. That's full circle for
Yeah.
sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
super full circle. I remember when
Mm-hmm.
it clicked, like the day it clicked for me, I was like, man, you really did know all along. You just didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And you're doing a phenomenal job, and you've done a phenomenal job, and because you've impacted me in a positive way, just seeing you thrive in your element, how you interact with people, how just inclusive language is just instilled in how we interact all the time. I guess instinctual now.
yeah, yeah.
And so share like your experience with adaptive sports. I know you went out to Utah, right?
hmm Yeah,
Utah.
yeah, Park City, Utah, at the National Ability Center. So I, like you, I kind of had my heart set on a very specific, certain kind of internship, and really had my heart set on this one in North Carolina that was adaptive sports. And what it was this full circle care where you would work with people in the hospital throughout their recovery stage in the hospital, but then you'd also, when they were discharged, you'd work with them in outpatient, and then after that you'd work in adaptive sports.
Super dope.
So it was cool because you could kind of see all these stages of the impact of
Mhm.
therapeutic recreation, and from the very instant somebody sustains an illness or an injury that changes their life, from that moment all the way through to independently recreating on their own with their own equipment. That's a whole life cycle of recreation, and I really wanted to
Wow.
be a part of that whole thing. And that did not, it was not like an approved site, and it didn't come through. So I was in a position where I didn't have an internship, and like I was gonna have to wait until the next semester. And so So, by a turn of fate, switch of hands over at the National Ability Center, they happened to not secure interns in time. And so they had like a couple extra spots and made some calls, got an interview, and in the matter of a week, but by making that call, was told you got to be out to Utah by Monday and have a place to live and like a way to get there and all that. So it was like I basically had 7 days to find transportation, a place to live, and get my butt out across the country.
Wow. Wow.
Yep,
And you got it done.
I got it done with
Yeah.
the absolute support. My sister drove out with me.
Okay.
Uh,
So you
you know,
drove.
drove, yeah. Yeah, I mean, at that point, because I was moving there, so like if I were to fly, then I'd be stuck, maybe not having a place to live. So like the car was also like, if all else fails, I'm sleeping in the car kind of thing. Which probably wouldn't have happened. My sister was with me. That was a very memorable journey for us, and something that I'm really glad we did together too. So it was a blessing for sure.
Wow. How
Yeah.
long was the drive?
It was 4 or 5 days, I think. She wanted it to be a lot longer, and like she wanted to stop and like, oh, let's see this and let's see that. And I did, of course. I'd never traveled at like by that stretch of the word at all.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'd never been on a trip like this. I'd never been out west. I'd never, seen any of this. So I wanted to stop and see too, but I had all this anxiety. Like, I'm talking to this random person on Facebook who has a room for me, this random dude in the middle of nowhere. Like, I need to get out to Utah and figure out my life. So I sort of rushed her along, which I
Mm,
felt bad about. So we always have said, one day we're going to do it again without that rush, because that was a point of conflict for us at times.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, as you're entitled to that for sure. You want to get you just want to get there. You want to make sure you have that place established, and you don't know the person.
yeah,
So that's totally understandable. Hopefully, you're able to take that trip
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. But we're about to get real with this next question.
All right.
Um, and it's necessary, especially for individuals that are in the field of recreation therapy, or anybody who just wants to advocate for people.
Yep.
So, how do you feel society treats individuals with disabilities?
Um, I feel that it's hard to say society as a whole, because we
Yeah.
interact with you and I with so many people who have such a strong variety of outlooks on the spectrum,
Yep.
from the absolute best, most utmost dignity and respect, all the way through to, disdain and disgust. And you and I have worked with individuals even who fall somewhere on that, um, on that line. And uh, for me, I think when I look at recreation specifically, therapeutic recreation specifically, right now, at least in the Northeast, this is my feeling, that they're very much viewed as the exception to the rule. Like when you see somebody skiing in a sit ski out here, I feel like they're like, wow, that's like good for him, and it could be a news story, because it is this novel, like you don't see it happening. Whereas I I think out west, because of the celebration of recreation a little bit more in general there, it's more of the expectation. It's
Mm,
more of everybody skis. So of course this guy skis, even though he has a spinal cord injury. Like, of course it's more of it's an
normalized.
expectation that, yeah, it's normalized. It's an expectation that things are accessible and inclusive, rather than that one novel place that's accessible and inclusive. And um I think we have a long way to go as a society in general to inheriting that idea of, it should be an expectation that when things are designed from the ground up, a building, a play space, a playground, whatever, they should be designed with inclusion in every sense of that word in mind, with welcoming, not just meets ADA standards, but this is a place for you and you and you and you and you and no, like no
Wow.
exclusion.
Wow, that's beautiful, and that's the ideal society, And we are inclusivity assessors. We still got that
Yeah.
card for
Yes.
sure. So
I'm
we could
actually
go.
retaking the course right now just to freshen up my skills.
You're
Yeah.
gonna have to send me that link because I want to
Yeah.
look into that for
Yeah,
sure.
I will. Yep.
Yeah, and I wanted to hear your perspective there because um, as I'm not directly associated with recreation therapy anymore because I'm not in any type of hospital or
Right.
rehabilitation center, long term care, VA, none of those.
Yep.
And I work with someone directly, um, but just hearing other people's dialogue around people with disability is sometimes is negative. Well, majority of the time it's negative,
Yeah.
and then I just think about the people that we know, and it's a totally different spectrum and stuff. So now that it's a sense of advocacy, or do you have the capacity to have those conversations with individuals, And it's important to acknowledge people with disabilities because they are people first.
Yeah.
They still exist.
Yeah.
They have great abilities. Most people with disabilities that I've interacted with, borderline genius,
Yeah. Yeah.
borderline
Yeah.
genius. There's this one person that we experienced. Um, Never ever gonna forget her just because of her personality, regardless of the vernacular she likes to use.
I know who you're talking about.
She was a genius. She was
Mhm.
beyond her time.
Mhm.
Beyond her time. What was she? About 7 or 8 years old? Not maybe a little older.
I think she was 12. She
12.
was probably 7 or 8 when she started in our program,
Mm,
maybe 12 or 13 after. But you're right, though. She was a perfect example of someone
yeah.
who she almost couldn't handle how much smarter she was than the rest of her universe.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's it's instances like that where I have high hope for people that dive into this realm because they get to experience that. They get to experience the different spectrums of autism and stuff like that. And we need to expose that to the world
Yeah.
constantly because
Yeah.
of those negative connotations that have been placed. And there's a lot of steps that's taken
Yeah.
out east, like with the accessibility sign, is
Yep.
more proactive.
Yep.
That
Yep.
individual is on the move instead of
Yeah.
stationary, dormant.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
little steps.
And it's so interesting to see, and I think a lot of people don't see it from the outside. People might have seen that sign change and been like, was that really the what we needed? Is that what we needed to do? And I think we have to remember how important, and we can talk about this again in every sense of the word here,
Yeah.
how important representation is, though.
Hmm.
And I mean, when it comes to someone with a disability, them being represented in that way of capable, or
Hmm.
even on TV and in movies and as roles in where they're not the person that's casted as a burden or a sad story or this tragic thing, but they're rather cast as the human that they are, who happens to use a wheelchair for everyday mobility. It's
Yeah.
that representation. It's more than just a sign. It's really
Exactly.
speaking to the fact that there's someone in that chair making it move.
Mm.
And I know that it might sound far-fetched to a lot of people, but I was excited about that change for sure.
Me too. Me too. And those individuals' arms are brolic. Brolic. I'm telling you, they could. Well, it depends on the person. There's individuals that are Olympic where are in the Olympics and they're thriving in terms of
Yep.
doing 50 pull up straight and
Oh
stuff
my gosh, yeah.
like totally capable,
Yeah.
totally capable. So it's absurd to just hear it sometimes, you
Yeah.
know, just because of the reality of those individuals.
Hmm.
And in that realm, because that's a form of oppression,
Hmm.
that makes me think about black people.
Absolutely.
And your perspective is highly important for the growth of society. So what is there any hope? Is there any hope there?
Um, I think for me to say that there's hope is almost, my opinion doesn't, I feel like my perspective to say that there's hope, that's because I have the lens that I have.
Got
And
it.
I'm living in white skin and grew up with, a supportive family and had privileges that I can't take away, I can't erase from my history. And so my optimistic outlook, I fear like you can only, like, sometimes I tell myself, oh, you can only be that optimistic because, you have lived through mostly things that you could spin in an optimistic angle, and I can say things like this got better or that got better, so this is going to get better too. And it's just, yeah, it's hard to say from my perspective that what that word hope really means, but
Hmm.
ultimately my personal, from the skin I'm in, the hope that I personally have is that um more people will be able to interact and connect with more people who are not like them and who did not
Mm,
have an upbringing that was like theirs, and genuinely connect and actually sit at a table, so to speak, and accept each other for who's sitting at that table. And like, we're all a product of our own experiences, and so my hope is that by connecting more and by having more voices and more perspectives in your life as or in the community and represented, and the more diversity there is there, the more people I hope would be influenced by those experience. Like it's like my role model discussion. Like when I meet someone, I'm like, oh man, you really, like, you kick butt in that way. I'm like, I want to kick butt like that too. It's the same thing. Like, I'm taking a glance at their experience and I'm appreciating it. And I just, right now, it just feels like we're stuck in these silos sometimes. And where it's like, I have my perspective and all these people that agree with my perspective, and they had all the same experiences as me growing up. So, of course, their perspective makes sense. And we're all talking about each other and making stuff happen and making decisions. And it's like, there's a whole other silo over here with the opposite. I think that coming together, that's what it's going to take. It really is.
wow, wow, that's gonna change somebody's paradigm for sure. So
I hope so.
I appreciate you sharing that for sure. Cause we could talk about that topic
Oh,
for
yeah.
hours. It's
Yeah.
so important to have dialogue in this sense. But we're gonna move on to hockey.
What a
we're gonna
segue.
we're gonna move on to hockey because
Hockey.
you humble yourself. Like you're constantly being humble. You've played hockey post college.
Yeah.
Well, let's say that you've played hockey post college.
Yep.
So tell us about your experience playing hockey.
Um, so I started playing because I wanted to be like my dad, and
Wow.
he played casually. He played competitively, like, as a kid, and then he played in like these men's leagues where back in that time they were like always fighting leagues and stuff. I remember seeing him get in a fight once and like crying, like when I was really little. So I was just you know, one of the many privileges I experienced was the exposure to hockey and the
Mm,
opportunity to play. And it's the I got to be one of the least diverse sports. You know, there were very few kids who weren't white suburban kids playing at the time. I will say that I didn't make that observation until way later in life, because for me, I was preoccupied with being the only girl most of the time. And so until I started playing with other girls, you know, 10, 11, 13 and up, uh, I always played on a boys team, or a team where everyone was a boy and I was a girl. Maybe some lucky seasons there'd be one other girl, you
Wow.
know, and that was a whole realm of a mental battle, you know, because it was always proving myself as, you know, like the second they see a ponytail, they're going to wonder how good you are, where they wouldn't pay attention to the, you know, any random guy out there. But because there's a girl, it's like, it was like this novelty thing for a while. I think a lot of that's getting better. More girls are getting involved. Support for girls programming is getting better. And so you're seeing less of that. But I still, to this day, if I get invited to play in a league I've never played in, or on a team I've never played on, still to this day, that initial, like, you hear the stuff they say on the bench, you see the looks, you hear things when you're on the ice, off the ice, in the locker room, and it's like, you know, it's just funny that it doesn't ever really go away, even though it's gotten better. But yeah, it's
Wow.
interesting. So I was very, very much preoccupied with that whole relationship with hockey that I had. Um, and you know, I transitioned to girls hockey fully in college. That was my first time playing on just a girls team. And that was like a whole different kind of, you know, whole different kind of battle there, because you got a bunch of moody girls competing for ice time, and, you know, just a lot of hormones and a bunch of cattiness and stuff like that. So, you know, as wherever you are, you got, you know, about team drama, and
Absolutely.
you get that. So
Absolutely. For sure. So, why did you decide to play post college? Or where
um
did you play?
I played after, so Buff State I played for 2 years, and then I played a season in Sweden, and I really didn't think I was going to come finish playing college hockey, but it was a complete serendipitous stroke of luck. It just worked out with Cortland and rec therapy, and that was when I made that official life change, career change. And then after that, I mean, in college, I had to work so hard for every minute of ice time, and I was in my own head. I was my own bully, my own critic. My mental state got in the way of my performance 9 times out of 10. And so it was always this anxiety of like, am I going to be in the lineup? Am I going to play well? Am I going to have a bad shift, a good shift? Is my coach going to, you know, whatever, be upset with me? Am I let my team down? And as soon as I graduated, all of that went away. Like, it just
Yeah.
lifted. All of a sudden, I didn't have a coach who seemed to just never be happy with anything I did. And I, all of a sudden, just all of it went away. And you know what's crazy is that my performance elevated. So, like, the player I am now, when I play with girls who I played with in college, they're like, low key, who are you? You know, like, who is
Yep.
this? And I'm like, this is somebody who is not plagued by anxiety the entire time they're on the ice. This is somebody playing for fun and for the love of the game, and with confidence and self-respect. And so I'm doing things that I didn't give myself the chance to do. And so that, you know, and I mess up and I don't beat myself up for it. So then the next time I try the same thing and I get it right. It's like, it was something I wish that clicked before I
Yep.
went to school, because I might have had like one goal or something.
Mm.
but it didn't. And so now, but now I'm really enjoying it as an adult, and on my own time. And this is something I'm like, I can beat myself up for a bad play still, but it's not because my coach or anything like that. It's because I'm like, oh, you could do better.
Wow. That right there, that's the story of my life as well. You know, high anxiety when it comes to expectations or what I perceive the expectation is in as a well, from the coach, am I running the right plays and stuff? Should I do this and
Yep.
stuff? If I do this, it's gonna lead to me coming out of the game. All of those internal dialogue. You're not focused on the love of the game. You're not focused on what you naturally do and stuff. It's a totally different ball game when you are just practicing by yourself and stuff like that. Like I know exactly what you mean. Post college basketball, I played semi pro for a couple months,
Woo woo.
and 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 I played in the adult league, and what was it, last summer, and I was averaging like 22 a game. And that's just because of what you were saying, like that confidence, not worrying about what a coach is thinking and things of that nature, just free flowing and just being your most authentic self in that space, you know. So kudos
I
to
remember
you.
coming to your game,
I was
and
so upset that
I
game, I
know,
remember.
and I remember saying like literally like you were like a different person at that game. Like I knew you pretty well at that point. And
Yeah.
I was like I had a pretty good take on like your general disposition. I had never seen you in that state before. I just never seen you not win a mental battle ever. And so that was something that was like I was like it didn't even I didn't even know, you know, I was just like, oh, this must be like gray at basketball. You know, I have a hockey personality that people will be like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
surprised you're aggressive or something, you know, like so I was like, maybe this is just his basketball like persona. But yeah, no, it was a mental battle.
That was tough because the game probably it was a lot of systematic stuff, well, conflict that was happening and stuff. So like my debut of semi pro had a great performance. It was like 15 points and 5 assists, something like that, a couple of rebounds, steals, blocks. Great
Nice.
performance. And then stuff that was happening amongst the coaching staff, and it affected me in a negative way. So then, and including with my playing time. So now, like I started to put, I was in my mind and stuff like that, and that was affecting my performance dramatically. And and then y'all came at the same time, so that was in my head too, not focused on the game and stuff. So I actually outburst, like I went like
Our
he.
fault.
I
Oh,
remember he took me out, and then I went in the backstage, and then like I knocked down all of the chairs, smacking stuff, and it wasn't me. And well, it was me, but I wasn't in control of me. That's a whole nother conversation of perception.
you were
But
beating yourself up big time.
oh yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely,
it was
absolutely,
crazy because I remember like I didn't see all that like behind the scenes stuff. I just remember being like thinking about, you know, I was like, oh, I know that feeling. Like
yeah,
when you reach the point of no, you know, I guess I just it was interesting to hear from your perspective afterwards, like what you were going through at that very moment. Cause
yeah,
it was you know, just it just shows like you for me it was just like how not hijacked you were by like the anxiety of it, but how important it was to you for you to
yeah,
perform. And how not just you but like your whole team, like you genuinely wanted performance out of your team. I remember you like you were on a different level, like
yeah,
you were in a space where like you wanted to get work done. And
yeah, for
yeah.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure. But I let it all go,
Yep.
and now I'm training. I still train as if I'm playing professional.
That's
I
so
gotta,
smart.
yeah, yeah, and I need to play basketball more, but I don't have opportunities to go to the gym
I
as
know.
much. So, but I'm definitely gonna get there. But back to you. Let's dive into this traveling experience of yours. Like I'm so excited. Well, I got to experience it with you from a distance because we were in communication.
Yep.
But I would love for you to share exactly what you did, how long you did it, and then we'll go from there.
All right. I recently took a extreme advantage of my pandemic situation, which was programs not being able to run in person and me being pretty much grant writing full time, and something that you can do with limited internet access, something you can do alone and while traveling remotely. So I took a leap of faith and took a 10-week trip across the country with my dog, in my truck and a tent. And I traveled from basically across the north, from the northeast to the northwest, and then down the California, not coast, because everything was on fire at the time, but the more inside of California, and then across Arizona. And that's when I started heading back east through like the Midwest all the way over to North Carolina. And then I came up north from there. So like a little circle, big
Wow.
circle.
10 weeks.
Mhm.
10 weeks. What
Yeah,
was that experience like for you?
it was challenging. Challenging and incredible. And I think I'm still processing the amount of growth I
Mm,
got out of that trip. Like it hasn't, I'm still learning each day, like some of the things that I learned about myself or about other people, other groups of people, very much still processing that even today, even though I've been home for like a couple months now. So,
could imagine, it's so much experiences that you experience in those 10 weeks. And I would say a like a form of solitude. I mean, you were with your partner in crime for sure,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
I know you were having a lot of internal conversations and being immersed in nature. That's one of the most beautiful and spiritual things you can do. So I know I know for sure there was a lot of spiritual awakening moments for you for
Oh, yeah.
sure.
Big
Seeing the
time.
stars,
Yeah.
moon.
Oh, yes. I
Mm,
mean, I've said before, I have a wonderful therapist who I've been seeing for 3 years now, uh, four, maybe 4 years now. And she's wonderful, and we talk a lot about that spiritual connection, and kind of noticing where it happens and noticing when, and like where you are and what you're seeing, just noticing.
mm,
And so having worked with her on a lot of stuff and then going on this trip and I was still connecting with her while I was on the trip. Um, the biggest thing that came up for me that I, might have missed without doing that noticing is that I like meet versions of my past self or future self, or like I meet these other versions of me, or these parts of me rather, in different settings, like in the woods when I'm, you know scared, or it's, maybe a scary or a cold situation. Like I meet these different parts of me and I get to have conversations with them. I know it sounds crazy, but like it's almost like there's this girl waiting at different parts of the woods, or next to rivers and mountains, that's like waiting for me there. And then I get there and I can just sort of see things from a different perspective. Like it's very interesting, but it's hard to explain.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The best explanation I can give you is, um especially if I have been somewhere before. Like, let's say I've been on a certain hike before and it's been years since I've done it. If I do that hike again and I sit in the same spot, like those same coordinates, that same space in this universe, that tiny little plot of, the dot in this huge, huge universe, I feel like I'm sitting down with the last version of myself that was there. And I can very much reflect on the mental state I was in the last time I was there and what's different now. And even tell that version of me, like, let's say I was really depressed the last time I was sitting under the stars in this kind of way, or the moon was just a certain way. If I was really depressed at that time, I can come back as my current self and tell that girl who was feeling really hopeless in that same setting that, hey, I just want you to know, like, look, it worked out. All those things you were worried about, you feel so much better now. You grew into a writer, you're doing what you want to do. And like, I just calm down. Everything's gonna be okay. And like comfort that past self. And when I do that, it's almost like I'm healing from some of those things I've been holding on to. It's like I'm telling myself what I needed to hear 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 1 year ago, and giving that girl permission to agree and giving that girl permission to say, okay, thank you. I needed to hear that. I just needed a hug. Like, I don't know.
Wow. You took me on this visual reality. You put me there, and what resonated with me and what I was able to visualize from what you just shared is you being immersed in nature and going to specific places that was meaningful for you, impactful, regardless of if you were aware of it or not, and tapping into that previous frequency and then healing an old version of yourself.
Yeah.
So nature right there is now like your medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to visualize like this version of you, and then just another version of you, like a clone or whatever it is, and you having that dialogue,
Yeah.
and then that internal dialogue, but also physical dialogue, because you can see it, and and telling yourself, the old version of yourself, exactly what you needed to hear, as if you're going back in the past from the future version of yourself, healing your present version of yourself.
Yeah.
And then you feel euphoric afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, and it's both healing and it's forgiveness too.
Wow,
Because
revelating.
it's, yeah, it's you know, a lot of the past, if you're a person that overthinks everything, or that has anxiety, or who has ever struggled with mental health in any capacity, you might kind of hate on one version of yourself. You might look back and be like, man, I just was such a friggin', like, whatever. I took that for granted, or I didn't even realize this, or I was, whatever it is that you really look at a past version of yourself and you're like disappointed in them. This
Mm-hmm.
was a way for me to forgive that girl who was growing and making mistakes, and to forgive the girl who didn't know things she knows now. And instead of looking back and being like, ew, I hated myself, I was so whatever, I was this way or I was that way, instead of having that like anger at myself for being such a loser, I instead am like giving that girl like a high five and telling her like, yeah, you were acting like a real jerk, but you actually turned out okay. So, you know,
Wow, wow,
yeah,
that's a movie. Like, that's a powerful movie right there. I love that. I love that.
yeah.
So, can you share anything that was, well, the whole experience was meaningful and impactful to you? Did you have a specific place that was one of your favorites?
Yeah, definitely. I think I never knew before taking this trip that I am a desert person.
Mm,
Um, I've always been a mountains and trees person, and I mean, still, I will say that's still my preference, but there was some kind of energy in the desert spaces that was different. Like it was a different kind of feeling there. And so I loved the Badlands in South Dakota. And I mean, I could have spent like my whole summer there, even though it was 105 degrees. I was like, there was something very profound about just like how small you are and how small it makes you feel just seeing like nothing for not nothing, but you can see for so far because
Yeah.
there's no trees. And so yeah, and on that note, like Escalante in Utah, it's like a national monument, but it's not a monument that you like go and see it. It's a territory. So it's like this huge chunk of land that unfortunately like just got cut in half by the last presidential administration. Like half protected, but maybe that'll change. So we'll see. But it's this huge territory of slot canyons where you have like tiny spaces to move around and
Seen the pictures.
mountains that are like just boulders that you could climb up. I mean, it's just very interesting. It's very different. It feels like you're on a different planet. It's just,
Wow.
it's that was, and so that was kind of that change in scenery altogether, like so dramatic, was just cool being there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You give me something to look forward to because
Yeah.
I've never even been to the West Coast.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Utah, I'm biased, of course, but I feel like Utah has a little
Hmm.
bit of everything. Like if I had to pick one state, or Utah and Idaho, they have like a good mix of terrain and topography. And so
Hmm.
that's, it's cool how much you can see, even in New York State, like how much there is to see in just one state, how different,
Absolutely.
like the different things you get.
Yeah, for sure. I'm all about the Adirondacks
Oh,
for sure.
forever,
Yeah.
forever.
Hmm. Absolutely. And we did the high peak, our first
Yep.
high peak for
Yep.
sure, and that was transformational. We're not even gonna dive into that story on
Another
this one.
time.
That's another story for sure, for
But
sure. So on your journey, you ended up getting a tattoo.
I did. Yep.
What's the significance of that tattoo? And tell the people what that tattoo is.
So the tattoo is a giant dancing skeleton, which when I told like someone I work with like what I was getting, she was like, "Who are you?" It's a very finely drawn, very delicate skeleton, and that's kind of its name is the delicate skeleton that I just gave it that name. There is one part that I added after the concept came, which was this little butterfly. So the skeleton has flowers and vines growing all out of her bones, and she's dancing in a very confident way. Which, how I should explain this is, I sort of sketched this, but I let the tattoo artist have his creative liberties because he's the professional.
Yeah.
And I had originally drawn it in such a way that didn't really express confidence. It just looked like kind of a stamp of a skeleton in a
Mm.
position. And the way he drew it, he has, her hips tilted forward as if she's like kind of proud to be dancing. And it was just cool how that came together because he didn't know me, but like that's what I needed. I needed a
Yeah.
more confident figure.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I added a little butterfly, tiny little, barely even notice it. That's for my aunt. She, one of my favorite people that I, ever knew as a kid. And she was obsessed with butterflies. So it's like just a little, but the big significance behind it, there's a lot, but it definitely goes back to that forgiveness of your past self and the ability to grow out of that past self. So like,
Wow.
first of all, we're all just bones underneath, right? We're all flesh and bones and blood. And it's like that human commonality, that we have is that we're held together by this, the very, very core of ourselves. And that's your skeleton. That's what holds you upright. And um I think that, I don't know, there's just something about skeletons I've always been like really drawn to because of they're so strong, but they're delicate, they're amazing and they're capable, but also they can be broken, and that's
Wow.
okay. And like, just a lot of symbolism there. But for me, this is really like an homage to the fact that I am always growing out of that original core of myself, and that even if that doesn't look beautiful or glamorous all the time, it still has growth, it still has potential, and it's this being that I need to treat like a being, and I need to treat with respect. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That was poetic. That was
That's
extremely
probably the best
poetic.
I've ever explained it, because most of the time when people ask me if they just see it, I usually just brush it off like, oh yeah, it's like a whole bunch of meanings. But
Yeah.
I don't know if it, and on different days for me, it really does mean different things. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm experiencing a low and I'm maybe kind of stuck on a trauma of the
Mm-hmm.
past, and the tricky thing with trauma is like it sort of takes on its own forms in the present, and so you don't always know that like that's the reason why you're upset. And just even having the tattoo as this visual reminder is like, again, reminding myself to give that girl who was in that position, give her a hug. Like she's right on the side of my ribs. Like I can literally physically wrap my hand around her and say like, you're okay and you're good. And then that helps me pass through the what I'm reliving in the moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And that goes into your writing.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been doing that, and I got to experience some of your pieces.
Mm-hmm.
How does writing make you feel?
Oh, whole.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, I I loved the other day when you were in your presentation when you said it was a coping mechanism. I was like, oh yes,
Yes.
that's what it is. I mean, it's a coping mechanism. It's an escape. It's a creative outlet. 'Cause,
Absolutely.
sometimes it's humorous. Sometimes it's just funny and lighthearted. It's not, and it has nothing to do with anything deep. Um, yeah, it's a total just. It's meeting myself. When you're writing, you're you're letting it go.
Wow. I like that. Meeting myself. I may have to utilize that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a listen, that whole frame of mind, that's a strong props to my therapist for being able to work with my previous outlook and that outlook, which
Mm.
is a much healthier one.
Yeah, this is great. I appreciate you sharing that for sure. Meeting myself, like that impacts me in a positive way, and I'm gonna reflect upon that because like I find myself when I'm writing, I'm tapping into a different frequency, and sometimes it's it's it doesn't even pertain to my reality, but when I'm in that state, um, I'm telling messages that may be for somebody else to experience. Like as this person is taking on the leadership role and living in my purpose, sometimes these stories that come onto the paper, it's someone else's story, and I'm able to just write it down in this rhythmatic way,
Yeah,
and it's profound, it's genius, and
it is.
it makes me feel so elated. Like I love when I complete a piece, and or even in that process, like it's so beautiful. So I know you get that experience as well, for
I'm
sure.
curious because like my writing process is kind of all over the place, but I'm curious when you write, um, do you like as you're writing a poem, do you scratch out and change it on the way as you come up with different thoughts, or do you like flip to a new page and start from scratch again? Like what's your process there?
Oh, I never start from scratch. I
No.
never ever. So, well, I start from scratch when I initially write,
Yep.
but once once I get into the space of writing one or two lines, I just go from there. Sometimes I may write two lines and think, nah, I don't like that anymore, which is seldom. and then change it. But majority of the time, I lock in dramatically. Like I can't do anything else, nothing else, and I just complete it to the best of my ability.
Wow.
And just doing that, I feel like you said whole.
Yeah.
Like that's the best way to put it. I feel whole.
Yeah.
But that's a part of the process. Just locking in and building upon it. I may be on one line for about 20 minutes. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's me for
Yep.
sure. Like I just it's so intimate. It's so intimate. I have such a great relationship with writing,
Yeah.
and just that finished product. It may take 5 6 hours, but it's complete,
Yeah.
and it's released into the atmosphere and into
Yeah.
the universe. So
Yeah.
that's my process.
I was just curious. I'm always curious to hear uh anyone who admits openly and even beyond that like publishes a book of poetry. I'm
Yeah,
like, I just want to know. Yeah, because it's not commonly like people don't outright, that's not usually like the first thing someone says
hmm,
about themselves. You might not know somebody is a writer until later on into knowing them, but
yeah. Like I didn't know that about you. Like I just recently found that out, and I force you to
yeah.
share. Force
Yeah,
you to
yeah, it was,
share.
and for me, it was a very personal thing, and yeah, there was a lot of old attitude around it, like, oh, they're gonna think I'm like weird. It's similar to like those who go to therapy, like I'm
Yeah,
very open about it now because I think it's important, and I think it needs
yeah.
to be like secondhand nature. Like, of course I go, like I think it
Sure.
should be that way, but it's the same way with writing. I'm like, now I'm more likely to be honest about that.
As you should. It's an extension of you.
I
What
gotta
is it?
share too. My boss is a poet.
Oh yeah, oh
Yep,
yeah. I remember you were
yep.
telling me that.
Yeah, and so that was a great, like, I don't remember at what point, like how far into knowing him that I found that out, but I remember when he told me, and I was like, wait, of course, like, of course that would be like, that's great
Mm,
because, like that's just a good, I don't know, just to even say that, let alone, share the work is a huge, I don't know, it just speaks to like that's that's a certain kind of person.
yeah, absolutely. It's universal, regardless of what language it's in.
Yep.
For sure, for
Yep.
sure. So, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Ooh, it's a tough one right now.
Mm,
No, I see myself in 5 years. I think the only thing I'm really pretty certain of is what I'm doing for work right now.
mm,
I feel really confident. I have so much respect for the founder of the organization I'm working for, and we have a great working relationship in that our passions are very aligned. And you know, I have so much that I've already learned from him in such a short time, and so much that I continue to learn, that I'm like, I'm really enjoying it, but I'm also seeing the potential for impact, and it's getting me really excited. So it's a slow boil. It's like a lot of groundwork to see even the littlest project come into fruition, but I see it happening. I'm confident, and I'm not in a place where I'm worried about, being told like, oh, that's not how we do things, or we're going to cut that, or we're not going to do this anymore. And you've seen me in that setting
yeah.
where I want so badly to like just do something that I know would be impactful, and like my hands are kind of tied. And so I feel the opposite of that here. I feel very supported in my mission, and um the mission of the company that I work for is same thing. It's like it just couldn't be more aligned. So I see myself working in the same place. As far as anything else, I have no idea. I don't know. I have no insight to what my life's gonna look like outside of hopefully still chipping away at that community mentality, that community, um, full community inclusion, and yeah.
And that's okay. That's totally okay. The fact that you are in a space of passion and connectivity
Yeah.
and creativity to a certain extent, because you have to be real formal when writing grants and
Yes.
stuff, but at the same time you're seeing more than that. You're seeing um the byproduct of what you're doing leads to this, and
Yep.
that's what's satisfying. So
Yeah.
that's beautiful that you're in
Yeah.
that space.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
COVID has stalled a lot of the things that we were most excited about and actual literal programs getting to happen. And we had like this one amazing program that was like this, just the best thing ever. It was, you would love it. I was going to get you involved. It was at School 29 in the city of Rochester, and it was this inclusive basketball program where we were providing all the chairs. But here's the best part. So it it hit every note that made my heart happy. It was after school during extended learning time. So the kids didn't need to worry about getting a ride from their parents. And all the kids that have to stay in ELT because of their parents working later, they're there anyway. So we had 75 signed permission slips. We had all the teachers on board. We had the equipment, and we were like ready to rock and roll when COVID hit. And this school is in an area, like they have a high population of um, individuals with physical disability at that school. And they also have a high population of low income families at that school. And so I was seeing this incredible opportunity to offer something that every kid, no matter what they were going home to, no matter what their physical abilities were, every kid could come and be on this same playing field for like just an hour after school. And I was like, I was going to measure like how it affected performance in school. And like, it was such a well-rounded thing. And I was so pumped. And yeah, that was like the heartbreaker. But as soon as it is safe again, that's going to be like the first thing we get back at.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow, that was a elated me just thinking of that environment of
Yeah.
everyone coming together and revolved around basketball, which is an
Yeah.
amazing sport that changed my life. So I already know that would have been impactful and stuff. You still got your red book?
I don't have my red. I know.
What?
I need to get it. It's on my list for
Yeah,
sure.
I
I
thought
know you have yours.
I just bought it
Oh, you did?
recently.
I wonder, I could probably find one online. Look at that.
Yeah. So I was thinking that because you said the measurement and it has the assessments and stuff.
Yep.
So
I'll get it. I'm gonna get on that actually, because I think grant reporting is a whole nother ballgame. You have to use stuff like that for
exactly.
measurable outcomes.
Yeah,
So
for sure, for sure. Definitely get on top of that. So a part of what we do with the Renaissance Exchange when we come to a conclusion
mhm.
is this important question that I ask.
Okay.
And it is, if you could identify with any animal, what would it be and
Hmm.
why?
So funny because I feel like this is something like you would have nailed down by now. Like you would think I would know by now. What animal? Ooh, it's hard not to say dog just because mine is snoring right next to me right now. You know what's funny? I gotta say my tattoo artist asked me the same thing, and I did not know what to say. Like I had no idea, and I still don't know. But
Wow.
um, I'm gonna go with mountain lion.
Wow.
Yeah,
A mountain lion. Tell
yeah.
me more. Why?
So I like that they are elusive, like they're not something that's like necessarily like out there all the time, but they're very powerful, very confident. Um, they're I don't know, they're kind of like a cross between something that's intelligent and like fending for itself out in the wild, but also um their appearance, and it almost would appear that they would be like soft and approachable and like they're giant kitties, really. So like I don't know, it's like I guess they're a little bit mysterious. Like I don't know, when you see, it's kind of the same thing when you see like a baby bear or something like that, you're like, oh, like that could be, why couldn't this just be like my friend my whole life? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if I met a mountain lion, I'd want to like try to, play with it or something, even though that's against the recommendation.
Yeah, that's not safe at all. But that makes total sense to me because you shared that you played a lot of sports with males when it came to hockey and stuff,
Yeah.
and and you may look fragile, but you come across me, I may knock you over. It's a high chance that I'll knock you over and stuff. So, and then the intelligence and the confidence that you're growing in, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, they're
Mountain.
pretty agile, I feel. And, like I like to, not necessarily in the physical sense of the word, but I like to think of myself as mentally agile, or at least working on that, being able to
For sure.
quickly, adapt and figure something out kind of quick on your feet, sort of thing. And they say that cats always land on their feet, so
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
That's beautiful. So I want to thank you. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time and sharing so much gems that this world is going to benefit from. Um, let the people know where they can find you,
Yep.
and yeah, just let them know.
So my email.
Yeah, if somebody wants to get in contact with
Yeah.
you,
Um,
anything.
so I would say the best way is probably email, and it's Caralie, Caralie 16, that's my hockey number, at
Hmm.
gmail.com. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's my personal email. But I would say, I I'm super excited to see this project unfold and like continue to watch your journey and your process as you're doing this. And so I want to be on some sort of, I don't know, I want to be informed of as things come out, because this is something that you've been talking about for a while, and I'm excited to see it unfold. And so is Laura, mutual
Uh,
friend. And yeah, so yeah, keep me posted, keep me informed.
Absolutely. So again, this is Hulk Renaissance, and the YouTube channel is Hulk Renaissance. But this segment is the Renaissance Exchange. Right now, I have it on YouTube. It's going to expand to a podcast. So that's in motion right now. The equipment just came, so I have to do the behind the scenes work to make that into a reality, which I will do for
Of
sure.
course.
Yeah, but
Well,
again,
it's been awesome. I'm excited to hear everything come together and keep following your journey and your process and ultimately learning.
absolutely, absolutely, it's a lifelong journey for sure, and the space that you're in, you're constantly going to learn, you're going to grow, and you're going to impact the world in a positive way.
That's
Mhm.
the hope, man.
Yeah.
Do
But
no harm.
that's true. That's true. So yeah, thank you,
Yes.
and let's do it again. Let's do
Yeah.
it again for
I gotta
sure.
interview you. There's so much that you asked me that I was like, but I want to know what he's
For
so
sure, we definitely can arrange that. I look forward to the day I'm interviewed. I can't wait till someone offers me that opportunity and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will I'll keep you posted, because it's something I'm gonna hopefully one day get around to doing, is making a little short video about my trip, that involves
Mm,
a lot of like dialogue and things. But one of the things I want to incorporate into that video were perspectives and inputs, from people who have influenced my life to the point where they remained influential on that trip. Like
mm,
you played a role in my growth on that trip, and Mike played a
wow.
role in my boss and my parents and my sisters. And so I think because in a way you were on that trip with me, I want to create something that's like inclusive of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And whenever, just let me know. We can make it happen
Awesome.
for
Sounds good.
sure. So enjoy the rest of your day. Again, I
Thank you.
appreciate you for being on the Renaissance Exchange.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Right. Peace and prosperity.